G'day Trailblazers, my name is Cam, and welcome to Lesson 3 in the Introduction to SQL in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. In today's session, we'll be going through and learning table joins in SQL, building upon our previous knowledge using our syntax and our fundamental learnings. If you haven't learnt or gone through the previous sessions, that's classes 1 and 2, make sure you pause the video now and check out the links in the description below, because we will be building upon the data and learnings from those previous sessions. So make sure you're up to date, make sure you've covered those sessions first. So let's get stuck into it. You do need a couple of links for today. You will need access to the Introduction to SQL in Marketing Cloud database diagram. I'll put the link to that in the description below as well, and it will look just like this. So make sure you have access to this table as we go through. We will be covering joining different tables in today's session. So jumping into Marketing Cloud, we've also got our Automation Studio activity, which we used in our previous lesson. We also have access to our data extensions. Now, to learn our joins for today, the first thing I should direct your attention to is a fantastic image that you can find for yourself if you Google it, just by jumping in and Googling SQL join. If you type in SQL join, you'll find an image that looks just like one of these two here. These are my favorite images to describe what a join is in SQL. And it looks a bit like this. So as you can see, there are multiple types of SQL joins that you have access to. And those joins are listed here using some of the SQL syntax. You can see what we learned in our previous lesson, selecting something from somewhere, and now we have this join syntax. So you can see here two tables being represented with table A and table B. That's used throughout the diagram. You can see here A and B throughout the diagram. Now for our first one here, we have a left join. And what you can see it's doing is from two tables, we're wanting all the data that is in table A, and also maybe some of those records also exist in table B. That can be pretty useful. If you're trying to look up some data, so for example, some customers in table A, you're trying to look up some data, like an event invite, for example, that may exist in table B. And so you want to look up that data from A into B. Again, very useful. That's a left join. You can see from the syntax here that we are saying we are selecting from table A, that's our left-hand table, we are left joining that table onto B, our right-hand table. We have called table A as an alias, referring it to as table A, and we're calling table B as an alias, table B. We then specify how they join. Now if we jump back onto our diagram, we use that same example of customers onto the event reminder, we can see here that we have these relationships. You can see a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many relationship. It always goes from the original table into your selecting table. So if I was doing a left join, I'd say selecting my customers, so from customers, left joining in my event data. Or selecting from my customers, left joining in my invoices. I'm starting from customers, then adding things to it. So back onto my diagram, that's the left join. Again, using a reference of a key is equal to another key. So a field is equal to another field. Back onto our diagram, for our customer example, we are using the customer ID. We are selecting from customers, where the customer ID value in this table is the same as the customer ID value in this table, where the customer ID in this table is the same as the customer ID in this table, where the invoice ID in invoices is the same as the invoice ID in invoice detail, and where SKU is equal to SKU. Back on the SQL joins table, let's see what else we have access to. We also have a different way of choosing our left join. You can see in this visual representation here, we've got our left-hand table, the A table, but we've subtracted some records from it. We've done that by saying we're going to select some values from our left-hand table, our A table, left joining in our B table, same as above, but we've added a where clause. We're saying where the B value is null. Now is null is a fancy database term of saying doesn't exist. So we're saying select all the records from the A table where they don't exist in the B table. And as you can see, this center group of customers here have been removed. They don't exist in the B table. We can have a look at that by going back into our diagram and look at our customers to our event. We want to choose our customers, left joining in the event reminder, where is null, where they have not been invited to the reminder. Or for example, back to invoices. We are selecting from our customers left joining in our invoices where the invoice customer ID doesn't exist. This customer has 0 invoices. They don't exist in this table. So a really useful join to have is that left join is null to subtract records using another table. Now finally, as you can see, there are lots of tables to go through, but I just want to cover off these central 3. The left join is null, and most importantly, the inner join. As you can see here, the inner join allows you to get from 2 tables and only return values that definitely exist in both tables. So selecting from table A as A, inner joining table B as B, on key is equal to key. In other words, if we go back to our diagram, we could say, selecting from our customers, inner joining our invoices where customer ID is customer ID. As you can see from the visual representation here, it's the exact opposite to our left join is null. Our left join is null selected our records from A that didn't exist in B. The inner join does the reverse. It only selects the customers from A who do exist in table B. So as you can see, with these 3 functions combined, you can create some really unique data shapes. You can add and subtract records as you need to produce the right segments you need for your marketing activities. So let's now jump in, get our hands dirty, and try this out for ourselves in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So over in Salesforce Marketing Cloud and Email Studio, we've gone back to our data extension folder. Let's now make a data extension to put some data into based on a problem we have to solve. Let's start off by looking at our diagram. Let's, for example, choose our customers and let's join in some data about an event reminder. Now this is a one-to-one table, so we can simply look up some values. So how about we get our customer data and let's look up if they are attending the event, yes or no. Simple as that. So we'll get our customer table and we'll add in some attending data. So we'll jump in to our data extensions. We'll make ourselves a new data extension. Now we could go make one from scratch, or we can choose existing and choose to navigate to our existing customer data extension, which we can do here for customers, and we can add some more tables to it. I'm going to call this one Query 2. Now leave this one as sendable and testable for now, and we'll go next. So in Query 2, we don't actually want all this data. We're not going to use our bookworm information at the moment, so we'll leave those ones off, and maybe we'll leave the join date off as well. So what we do need though is some more fields. So let's now bring in some fields from that event attended. We'll use the event reminder and the attending value. So we'll type in attending into our value here. And for our attending value, we have to make sure it's the same data type, which of course is a Boolean field, a true or false data type. So we'll use Boolean and we'll leave it as nullable, just in case there's no records there. So with that new data set, we'll go create. With our new data extension created, we can now jump into Automation Studio and start to populate that data extension out. So I'll jump in, and here's our activity from last time. Let's make a new query. So we'll scroll down, get our SQL query, and drag it over here. I'm going to choose, and of course, to make a new query, we'll choose New Query. We'll call this one Query 2. So for our Query 2, and we'll go next, we have to write out our syntax. So we're going to, of course, select some data. Well, what data? Now, we are going to select some of the fields from customers and some of the fields from the event reminder. So a trick you can do, if you've already made your data extension, which we have, Query 2, to know which fields we're going to try and populate, we can simply go back into Automation Studio. We can navigate back to that data extension that we just made, Query 2. We can drag those fields in. And these are the fields that we're going to try and make. So customer ID, first name, surname, and email. And of course, the attending value, there it is there. We can drop off that trailing comma and go to our next line. Now here, we have to specify our from. And of course, we're going to select this information from, as we discussed, it's going to be from our customers table. So in my customers table here, I could type it out, or if I hover on the side here, I can actually select SQL customers, copy that data, and in my square brackets, paste the name, and dropping out that space at the start, of course. So from our customers table. Now, remember back to our diagram for SQL. We actually have to specify a few things. Because there's now going to be 2 tables of data we're choosing things from, we need to tell SQL which table we're referring to. Now in this example, they called table A the alias of A, and table B the alias of B. But we can do the same thing for our query. So we can call our customers table A. On our next line, we can choose to left join. You can see here left join goes blue, so it is a keyword, left join. And what's our second table? What's going to be that event reminder? So once again, I can choose the SQL event reminder text. In my square brackets, I can paste in event reminder. I'll call this one table B, just like that. Now, our next part of our syntax, of course, is the on statement. We're joining A and B on what? Well, our diagram says that A and B, customers in the event reminder, are joined one-to-one, so that's good, on customer ID. Let's do that then. So back onto our query, we're going to join A and B on what? Well, the A dot customer ID. That is to say that the A data extension, customer data extension, and the field name of customer ID, there it is there, is going to be equal to the table B, data extension B, and the field of customer ID. Just like that. You can check it out. We've got A and B, customer ID is equal to customer ID. Perfect. Now with this defined, we can go back into our query once more and make sure that we call out where the data comes from. Because customer ID is now an ambiguous field. If I go and validate syntax, it's going to tell me that, whoops, I've actually got an ambiguous column name, customer ID. We haven't told Marketing Cloud where customer ID comes from. Is it coming from table A or table B? We have to tell it where to look. So, of course, since we are choosing from customers, we want to get all of our customers back. We're going to choose from table A, from our customers data extension. We do the same thing for our first name and surname. Those, of course, also come from the customers table, and so too does email address. But the attending field, that comes from table B, the event reminder, so B dot, to specify that. Now to make this easier to read, I like to separate my SQL out with a leading comma on each line for each new field. So I can simply put a new line down just like this to call out each of those fields. I can see very clearly table A and table B, returning these values from table A and this one from table B. So I now have my query complete. I should go validate syntax and have a look for myself. Looking good. Now we do have this heads up warning because there is no where clause, but that's okay. Because as we know, we want to return all the customers looking up their event reminder information, returning back their attending flag. Good-o. So it looks pretty good to me. Let's go next. We can now choose to overwrite our data once more to replace all existing data and put our new data in. We can navigate through to our learning data extension. There it is there, 0 records in it. Query number 2, and we'll go next. So we're ready to go with our query 2. Let's now save our automation where we are. We can then run our query number 2 by going run once. So the outcome of this activity should be that we have a few data points from our customer table, customer ID, their first name, last name, email address, but it's also going to return back their attending status from the event reminder data extension. So we'll see which customers, their first name, last name, email address, are attending yes or no, or maybe blank if they don't exist. We'll soon find out. So we'll jump in, have a look at our activity, and hopefully it's going to run shortly, and I think it has. Almost, maybe not quite. All right, once it does run, we can go back and have a look at our data extensions and have a look at what our final row count is. We can see there 50 rows have come back. Lovely. So we'll jump into query 2 and have a look at those 50 rows. We only had a few columns of data, only a few fields, and of course they were nullable just in case there were no records returned. We have to have nullable so that data can allow for no records to return with that value. Back into our records, let's have a quick look, and of course we have John Doe and Jane Smith. Well, John's attending, Jane is blank. Lisa is not attending, and David is attending, but then Mary is blank. Interesting. Why could that be? Well, we're jumping into our folder. Let's have a look. We had 50 customers, of course, in our data set. There's our customers. We have 50. And for our event reminder, oh, there's only 37 events that were sent out. So that means not every customer was sent an invite to the event. Okay, interesting. So we can jump back into our query then, and that means that about 13 customers weren't even invited. Let's see what happened. I can go to my attending, and sure enough, that looks like about 13 records. There's the ones who were going to attend, and the ones who haven't. But in fact, it's actually more than 13 that haven't got an attending value. That's a lot more than 13. There's something else to the story here. Let's bring back some more information then from that table. Let's look up some more data to see what else is going on. We can jump back in, we can have a look here at our reminder status. Here we go. Let's bring back reminder status into my data as well and see what it looks like now. So my data extension, go into my properties, let's add a new field. We've got attending. Let's now add our status. And I'll call this one status. Of course, for our event attending status, what is it? It's going to be a text field, text 50. So go back in, text 50, yes, looks good. Nullable, of course, just in case there's no records that come back. And we'll save those fields. So we now have a new field to populate, the status field. There it is there. So I'll go back into my SQL, go back in my workflow and modify our query number 2 and add our brand new field in. So we've got our first few fields here. Let's go new line, dot, and I'll type in our new field of status. Now for our status field, we're going to be getting it from the B table, of course, for B status. And we're not going to change anything else because as we know, we don't want all the records to come back. We're not going to add any filters and any where conditions. So we'll just return back the status field, of course, right? Well, let's try and see what happens. Oh, well, of course, there is no field, there's no column called status in the event reminder table. It was called something else. It was called reminder status. So what can we do to rename it? Well, fun trick. Jumping back into our SQL, even though our destination calls that value status, you can see here our data extension for query 2, we've called it status, but the source data is called reminder status. So we have to rename that field. So jumping into our SQL, it's going to be called that, but a source is something else. So we can have a look for ourselves, back in our data extension, go back into our event reminder, and of course we have our reminder status. We can drag and drop that in, like that. So it's b.reminder status, just like that. And we can then call it something. So we're going to select reminder status as status and put it in double quotes just like that. So we're now telling the SQL Marketing Cloud to go and get the field from the B table called reminder status and rename the value header to be called status for our destination. Let's check it. Looking good, just a heads up warning, of course, because there is no where clause. That's okay. We have the values that we need now, so let's jump down and go next. And next once more, we'll leave it again as query 2 overwrite. Next, finish. With that, we'll save our automation. Let's run once our query 2, and hopefully we'll see that we've got a new field bringing in some new data. And hopefully we'll see more of the story. Why were only a few of those records invited? Why were there so many that had a null value for their attending? Well, again, we'll jump back into automation. Hopefully it runs shortly. It has, there it is there. There's our results. So we'll jump back into our learning folder. We should still see our query 2 has 50 records. Yes, it does. We'll jump into it. And our new field is there, of course, status. Yes, it is. Do we have some data there? Yes, we do. Okay. So this is why. If their status is responded, then we have a value. If the invitation was sent or the reminder was sent and they have not responded, then there's no value. That makes so much more sense. Okay, our data's making more sense to us now. So I bet if we go on the status here and sort the status, there's going to be about 17 records. It was 17 or 13 records. It was 13 records that weren't brought back. 37 versus 50, so it's 13 records that were not sent an event reminder. So I bet there's about 13 records that don't have status. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Perfect. So we now know the story of the data. So what can we do next? Well, since we have discovered there's quite a few records that have not been invited and also have not responded, let's try and select those customers. Let's start off by selecting the customers who we now know were definitely not even invited to this reminder. Let's try and isolate these 13 records specifically, so we can extract that data and give it back to our data team and say, hey, you missed out on these customers. So we'll try it out. Let's go back into our learning data extension, back into our learning data extension folder here, and query 2 will leave it as it is. Let's add a where clause now to that SQL query to isolate just those 13 records. So back on our workflow, back on query 2, let's modify that query by going edit. Let's now jump down and add our where clause. So where what? Well, where, and what are we going to try and select? Well, from our data, we know that, we jump into our query 2, if the status column was empty, then they definitely weren't invited. But also, if they're not even in that data extension, they won't have a customer ID to look up on. So we could use the customer ID or the status. We can have some choices here, but for today I'll use the customer ID since that was what we used to join our data extension on. So effectively, we're going to be using our left join is null option, cutting away all the customers that did have an invite. We don't want people who are in both the customers and the invite. We want those who are in customers and not in the invite. All right, so back into our SQL. Where what? Well, we want all of our customers, and if they are found in reminder, then we don't want them. So where the B customer ID, there it is there, is null. And there you go. Is, of course, doesn't highlight, unfortunately, but null does. That is a keyword. So we only want those records that are not found. So we'll go validate, and green light, we're looking good. Let's try it out. We should get those 13 records back. So we'll leave it as overwrite, query 2, and we'll go next and finish. We'll save the activity and run it once. And it's just completed in only a few seconds, so you can see they're completed. So let's jump back into our data extension folder. We did have 50 records in query 2. Hopefully we only have 13 records, and we do, 13 records. So these should be the customers we could now go back, extract them, and give them back to our business team and say, hey, you forgot to invite these customers. So let's now go back and do the reverse. We've now chosen those 13 customers who didn't get invited. Let's now go and select the other 37 customers who did get invited. So we'll jump back now into our Automation Studio and let's change our query once more. This time we're going to use our inner join to only choose customers who are in both tables. That visualization here again showing only customers who are in table A and table B. So back in our query, we can change the word left join to inner join. You can see it goes blue there. We of course don't need to have that where clause because we're not going to be doing the is null function. That would cancel out the idea of the inner join. So remove our where clause and we can leave it as that. We'll validate syntax, and of course again, yes, heads up, the where clause has been removed. But otherwise, it's looking pretty good for an inner join. So with that done, we'll go next, and let's re-upload that data to our query 2 data extension. So once more, we'll save our automation and run once. You can see now why it's really useful to be using an Automation Studio to encapsulate these queries as we're learning how to do SQL. It's really helpful to see how fast these queries run, and also if they succeed or fail. So it's now running, we can go back in and check it out. It should run any second now. And when it does, we should see 37 records, not our 13. So refresh our folder, we'll have a look at the query 2, and 37, there it is, so it's all finished. Jump into query 2, and what does our data look like now? So here's the customers who were invited, and some were sent but have not yet responded. Interesting, okay. Well, if they were sent an invite and not responded, maybe it's time for a follow-up email. Maybe we could do a journey or something to now remind them to respond to the event invitation. But we should check out to see what their preferred contact channel is. So what we could do, we can now go back into our data structure and check out what other data we have access to. And of course, we do have the reminder channel. So let's bring in our reminder channel value now from the event reminder to see who those customers were. Now, one thing that we can do is rather than bringing in the event reminder channel, we can also use it as a where statement and not bring the actual data in. Let me show you how that works. If we jump back into our data, we can have a look at that event reminder data extension and see what those values are. So I'll jump into event reminder, find our original 37 records. I'll have a look at what data there is. I can see here from my reminder channel, got email, got in-person, and phone. There's 3 values there. And I can see there are some people who were reminded by phone and sent the invitation by phone, but have not responded. Some who were done in person and have not responded. Some who are done with email and also not responded. So we could choose now. We did send an email originally, which they haven't responded to. Should we resend an email? Or perhaps we should leave them and give that list of data to perhaps our sales team. They can call them or meet them in person. Maybe we just want to choose those records that were in person or phone and now try and send them an email. Let's try and do that. So I'll try and find where the reminder channel is not email. We just want where the reminder channel was in person or phone, and they have not responded yet. Their response to us was sent. Okay, how can we do this? Well, we can jump into our query and start to write out that selection statement. Go to our query, choose edit, and let's modify this query once more. We already have our inner join written out, so that's fine. We're not going to bring in the channel data, but we are going to use it. So in our where clause here, we're going to say where what? Well, where the reminder channel is not email. So I can copy the reminder channels data field there and go and say where the B table, of course, B.reminder channel is not equal to. Now we can do the less than, greater than, like that. We're not equal to, and a text value of email. Okay, so not equal to email. We can check it out, and there we are. But it wasn't just where the channel was not email. We also want where their status is sent and not responded. Okay, so we could do where it's equal to sent, or because once they have responded, there's a true and a false. We could also say where the attending is null. But for now, let's say where reminder status is sent. So once again, we'll copy the reminder status value. Now, even though we are returning reminder status as status, since we are referencing the original source data for our where clause here, we do have to call out the actual original name. So, and in the B table, the reminder status was equal to sent. Okay, so with that done, we'll go over that syntax and we're looking good. Let's now run this data and try and get back those records to isolate just those few contacts who we did try and reach out to but haven't yet responded. So once again, we'll save our activity and run it once to produce our new data. And our SQL has just finished off, so we'll now have a quick look and we can refresh our folder and hopefully find that we have just 2 records. All right. So over on query 2, we have our records, and here should be our customers, our phone and our in-person. There we are, attending no, but sent yes. All right, so we could send this data now over to our sales team and I could contact them via email, and we could try and get them to attend the event. But what about if they wanted some more information? What about if we jumped over into our data, we actually wanted to get some more information about these customers? It's obviously a big event. We want to now bring back maybe how many invoices they've purchased or how many books they've purchased. Something else that we may have a value to add to the team who then has to contact them to try and encourage them to come to this event. Let's try and use another join function now to bring back, let's say, the sum or the count of how many books they've purchased to date. All right, let's try and do that. So of course we do have the invoice detail here, the quantity of books they've purchased, but I think we have a reference value here with the item count. That's how many items were in this invoice. And of course, since we're a bookshop, that tells us how many books they've purchased. So let's now jump in and have a quick look what that data looks like. So back over in our invoices information, go to invoices, and for each of our customers, of course, we have their customer ID. That's who the customer was who purchased something. And it tells us how many items were in that invoice. 3 items, 7 items, and of course, lots of people who just buy 1 book at a time. All right, so with all that, we should be able to do a quick function to bring back the count of all those items. So we can try it out. We'll jump into our automation, of course, and go back into our query, and we'll edit what we've got so far. Now this time, we're going to try and bring in some of that information about those invoices. So to do this, of course, we have to bring in some of that invoice data. But since we do want to return customers who have those invoices, they must exist in that invoice table. So we can use yet another inner join. So let's bring in with an inner join. We can copy down inner join. We're going to inner join what? Well, our SQL invoices, of course. So we'll jump into our learning. Let's bring in the invoices table. So SQL invoices in our square brackets. We'll call this one table C, good measure. Now, how are we going to join our invoices in? Well, invoices here relates back to our customers. This time, though, it's a one-to-many. A customer can have many invoices. So that's okay. It's still the same function for the in or the on join. What we'll do, go back into our SQL, we're going to join on C on our customers, a.customer ID, will be equal to, and what do we have in this C table of invoices? Well, of course, we have customer ID. Perfect. It's going to be equal to that, where C.customer ID. Just like that. So now we should have their invoices come back. Now what do we want, of course? We're going to want that total count, the value of those items they bought back, or the sum of those items. So here's our item count. We can go and get that field as well by navigating into our invoices. There it is there. We can bring in the item count, how many items they purchased. This of course came from table C dot, just like that. Now we of course have to have a place to put it, of course. So let's call it our total purchased books, or books purchased. So back into our data extension, we'll of course use our query to data extension once more with our 2 records. Let's go down now and we'll go edit fields, and let's do a total books purchased, just like that. Now what is it going to be? Well, it's going to be a number, of course, for our total. So go number, not nullable, or nullable, sorry, just in case, and our total books purchased. I'll copy that name as well, and we'll go save. So we now have that new field in our query to data extension, which means we can now put that value in here. Now we didn't call it item count, we called it our total books purchased, so as total books purchased, just like that. I can check out our syntax, and we're looking pretty good. Make sure that field is now being added. It's still saving the field. Oh, there it is there. Good timing. So we can now go through and go next. And go next to overwrite once more. Again, query to, yes, all looking good, and finish. So now we should be able to run this, right? We should have that sum of all the books they've purchased. And that way, when the sales team tries to contact them, or if we try and send an email, we can say as a highly valued customer who's purchased 5, 10, or 20 books, we can then contact them and tell them this is a great event to be a part of because of their loyalty to our bookshop. You can see the query there has just started off, and hopefully it's going to be finished any second. We can then jump in and see how many books they've each purchased. So the query is just finished running. We can see it's completed there. So we'll jump back into our data extension folder, onto query 2, and let's have a quick look for ourselves. All right, so through our records, and we do, okay, books purchased 1 and 1. That's curious. What could have happened there? We have some customers, and apparently they're worth attending an event, with only 1 book purchased each. That can't be right. Let's have a quick look. We'll copy one of these IDs. We'll go into our data, into the invoices, and see what's happened. I'll have a look at my invoices data. I'll go through our invoices. We've got lots of information here, so we'll go records. If I search for this customer, we can see here, well, yeah, that first customer has 1 completed purchase. But they've got another one here too. They've got one on the 15th of June and a second one on the 2nd of July. Both times they purchased at least 1 book. So what's happened with our data? Well, we actually have done a lookup using a primary key, which means it's only returned back 1 of the fields and not the count of the item count. So you don't actually have the full count of how many times they purchased books. All we have is just 1 of the looked up rows. And to solve that, you can join me for our 4th lesson, our introduction to SQL, as we'll go through some of our group by functions and learn how you can sum, count, max, and min to return back some aggregated information and statistics about your data in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Until then, happy learning SQL, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you're notified once episode 4 comes out. And don't forget to give the video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed this content to let me know so I can make more videos like this in Salesforce Marketing Cloud.